So we're gonna go ahead and start the video here. This is gonna be for practice number 2. Just a reminder that when you're finished with the practice, you do need to take a photograph and upload it onto Google Classroom. I do have those available for you guys now. Practice number 1 is the one that we did with the lily pads. So make sure that you upload that assignment as well, okay? And this is what the lily pad one looks like. So this is the one that you guys are doing for the lily pads. I do have a video link for that one too, but that's number 1. This is gonna be number 2. Okay, so at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with applying some color tone. I'm not going to, just like the other one was a little bit smaller, I am not going to use the entire, because I'm gonna make it a little bit more of landscape. So I'm gonna make it a little bit more elongated. So I'm just gonna draw a very light line so I have it as a guide. This one's actually gonna be just a little bit bigger than the one we did last time. And you can kind of see here where I'm drawing the pencil marks. This is gonna be where I'm going to try to stay somewhere along the lines in here for my landscape, okay? Just because I do want it a little bit more vertical. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create, and I know that this bottom half, all this down here, down on the bottom, is gonna be type of water, and then the top over here is gonna be sky, and then I'm gonna have a silhouette of a building, and I'm actually going by an existing image. So if you guys want an actual reference to look at, you guys can go ahead and type in Google image search. All I did was put Impressionism. If you put landscape, it should come out, but you know, technically you're gonna follow along with me. So I'm just letting you know so that way after the fact, if you guys wanna try it again because you didn't like the way the first one came out and you'd rather look at the actual reference as we're painting or as you're trying the second time around, then you can go ahead and do that. So I just put Impressionism, and then I had put landscape just to kind of, and it'll pop up the image, and you'll notice once you get so much of it, you should be able to reference it online, okay? So at this point, what I'm gonna start doing is texturizing in colors. The sky on the background on here, if we're thinking about it or breaking it off, the actual line itself for the line is somewhere a little bit further down than the middle. So I'm gonna start off here because we're gonna do the sky first. Now, it is kind of like a sunset look of what I'm looking at as far as the references. So think about colors. Usually when it's a sunset, it is different versus a sunrise. Sunsets tend to have more red down towards the bottom, then yellow, and then the blue. Sunrise, same thing, only it probably be going opposite. It's more of like pinks and purples down to more of like a yellow towards the bottom because the sun is setting. So the yellow is disappearing in a way, okay? So there's sunrise and there's sunset. We're doing more of a sunrise type. I'm not sure which one I said at the very beginning, but we are doing more of like a sunrise effect, okay? So at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the red first. Now, because I know I'm gonna want some oranges and I'm gonna have to do some mixing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of the red and I'm gonna put it over here first, okay? Now I wanna remove as much of the actual paint as possible. So I'm just kind of removing by twirling it round and round as I'm kind of going like this. So that way the majority of it comes off. And then I'll go ahead and just kind of wipe off the brush a little bit. Still has a little bit of red on there, but not enough to dirty some of the yellow that I'm going to be grabbing from here. Then I'm going to come here and I'm going to get some of the yellow. I'm going to put it down first. I'm not going to mix it just yet because I know I'm going to want a little bit more because I didn't grab enough. So once I have the yellow, then I can start with the mixing to kind of make orange over here off to the side. Now I have all this paint on my paintbrush, so I don't want to waste it by removing it off on my napkin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with orange first. I know I'm going to want red on the bottom. So I'm just going to start kind of putting some textured, and this is where you guys should start following along with me, some textured orange tone. I'm not going to worry about where the building is going to be because I'm going to put that acrylic on top. So I'm just going to start concentrating, like I said, on the sky. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm putting like brush strokes. And I'm kind of going, like if you notice, I'm going some this way, some in this direction. I'm kind of keeping it more or less in this format. I'm going to put just a little bit coming down because I do want it to mix with the red slightly. So I'm just trying to remove basically the paint that I have on my brush. And I'll put just a few on the top because I'm going to mix it into the yellows. Okay, now that I kind of have more or less, I still have some, but I have the majority of it. I am going to remove that with my napkin. Then I'm going to go into the red. Since this one's kind of close to my orange, it's fine. I'll just go ahead and use that because I know I'm not going to mix any more of the orange. And then I'm going to start putting some of the red down here close to the bottom. If it mixes with my orange that's still wet, it's okay, because that's what we want for that impressionistic look. Some of it should kind of blend into each other. So it's okay if they kind of mix as I'm placing it down, but I'm just concentrating on the red, putting some in this direction, putting some in the opposite direction, kind of like a crisscross, if anything, just to get some texture. And then I'm going to actually go back into the orange up here. So it's fine if it blends a little bit because it's already dirty with that color. So I'm just going to put a little bit in between the orange and red to try to get like a mid-tone in between that with the mix. Then I'm going to come back over here and mix a little bit more. So that way I can kind of get the variety of colors in between. So you're just going back and forth, back and forth. I do want more orange on the top, so I'm going to clean this off a little bit and get some of this lighter orange that's down here. And I'm just going to start placing some a little bit higher. If some of the parts have yellow because it didn't mix too good, leave it because that's good texture. Try not to mix some of those because it's good to have some of those color tones. The majority thing you want to make sure that you cover is just the white of the paper. I don't want too much white. So I'm not done with this because I'm going to start with the water line down here on the bottom. And so I know I'm going to be able to cover some of those. So that's why I'm not concentrating on those areas too much. Okay. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit more of my yellow. I can even make a little bit lighter of a yellow just by putting it over here and mixing with whatever orange is down here on the bottom. So that way I can put a little bit in here in this spot. If I want to go back and put just a little bit of texture here into the red, so that way I get some more varieties of color in there because I feel it's not enough, this is the time to do it. Just don't cover all the red. And then I'm going to go in, I'm going to remove because at this point now I want to make sure that it's mostly yellow. So I'm going to get yellow only and I'm going to start going up here on the top, try to get some more textures, going back and forth. Some more yellow. And it's kind of like a crisscross, like I'm going some in this direction, some in this direction, just to kind of get the movement of the brush. If I feel like I want to go back down here and just place a couple, you know, I can add a little bit of this color down on the bottom, especially where I see the white. It's the white of the paper that I want to make sure. So like right here, there's white, I can put like a little bit in there. That's basically what you want to make sure that you cover is any white of the paper. So on the top, I know I'm going to want some blue. I don't want it, like I do want some green because technically when the blue mixes into yellow, that's when you'll get green. I just don't want it to be completely green. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I remove as much. I'm going to go ahead and rinse it in my water. So that's what I'm doing right now. You don't see this on camera, but I am rinsing it slightly to make sure that I remove as much of the yellow as possible before I start with the blue. Now, if you ever pay attention to the sky when it's around this kind of, you know, like daytime, like this is like early morning. So usually you have a light blue, you know, it's not an intense blue. So I am going to turn this so you can see what I'm doing. I have my blue and my white. I'm going to remove some of the blue over here off to the side. I'm going to clean off my brush a little bit just with the paper towel to make sure I remove all of it before I touch my white and dirty it. And then I'm going to start putting some of that white over here off to the side to make a light blue. So now that I have my light blue here in between, I'm going to use this light blue for the very top. And I'm going to just, again, with the same pattern. I'm not touching the yellow just yet, just because I'm trying to give it a little bit of time to dry before I actually go in to the blue, because by the time I get over here, I will have some spots that have dried, some parts that are still wet, and that's okay. Like I said, it's okay if we get a little bit of green mixture with the blue and the yellow. I just don't want too much of it, because then I'm going to have to go back with the yellow again and try to cover. See, the good thing about acrylic is that if I mess up and I start at, like, let's say I start right now while it's still a little wet, and then I end up getting too much green, it's just mixing another color and going back on top. But I just want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So the more time you can give in between before you start mixing those colors, the better, okay? So at this time, like I do want a little bit more, so I'm just gonna go ahead and clean it off just to grab a little bit more white, because I know I'm gonna need more of this light blue, so I'm just gonna mix it now. If you already mixed enough white blue, leave it as is. I'm just mixing a little bit more because I know I'm gonna need it for the bottom. And then of course, remove as much of the blue as possible before I wipe. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just, you know, like if it's still wet, I do recommend, like you can always pick up your paper and kind of go like this a little bit. But mine's dry enough. I have maybe a couple of spots. If you don't have the patience to have it dry, you can always just get another separate paper towel. And like on the areas that are super, super wet still with the yellow, you can kind of pick up some of that. So you can see that I removed a little bit of it. So you can do that on a couple of parts. If you feel that it's too wet and it's going to take too long to dry, you can do that as well. So I just kind of did that just maybe to like 4 little areas. And so I'm not going to do anymore because I do want some of a mixture, just not 100%. So I'm going to take this light blue and now I'm going to start getting closer to my yellow. Again, some of it will mix if it's still wet, and that's okay. So I'm just going to go. I'm putting a little bit of water just because my paint wasn't like diluted enough. It's a little bit too thick. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put, if it's not moving on your brush, like you notice, you see how like a couple of times I did that and it's not moving. It's probably because you need a little bit of water on the brush for it to actually move. Sometimes the paint can be too thick. And so I'm just going to come in. I'm going to put some of this here. Now, I do want more yellow on here, but not where the blue is. I'm going to show you a technique right now to kind of make it look like it's more of a transitioning effect. However, I want more yellow. Like for me, this is too much of the orange and the red. So I'm going to go back with maybe something that's like this kind of orangey yellow. It has more yellow than orange in it. And I'm just going to start putting a little bit more just on top, going down, just because for me, mine looks a little bit too orange and I don't want that effect. So I'm just going to go back and cover this just a little bit. And if you guys notice, let's say it's just too red, you want some of the red to peek through, just not as much. What I recommend is put some of this color in there, touch the water just slightly. And if you touch the water as you're putting it, it's gonna look more translucent. And that can also help you guys, for those of you guys that don't see the transitions. If it's not transitioning, like if it just looks like this, where it's completely just flat, like a flat color, we want some type of transition without losing the brush strokes. So an option for you is to get that same color, that whatever you want it to transition to, dilute it with water so that way it's a little bit more translucent. So as you put on top, it's not going to look so harsh of a line. So on this one, maybe I might want to do the translucent color. So now that I come here and I touch it, for sure my blue is dry. I still have a little bit of yellow that's a little bit wet, but that's okay because I actually want to go a little bit on top of the blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the yellow, and just yellow, not the orange yellow, but just yellow. I'm going to touch the water. I'm going to come over here just to make sure that it is translucent. So I just basically dipped my brush in the water while I have the actual paint. So paint, water, and then you come over here and touch. So that way it's diluted. So that way when you go on top of the blue, it's more of a translucent yellow rather than looking super green, okay? So that's an option to be able to do some of the transitions. And as it dries, it's gonna look very different. So I'm just gonna come in and I'm just gonna put a little bit into the blue so that way it starts transitioning slightly. And then once that is dry, I'm gonna do the same thing, but with the blue and opposite. Go a little bit into the yellow, but with more of a watery effect. So that way it does not turn green, like it's not like a green, because if not, it's gonna look like these greens over here. And that's not what we're going for. So I'd rather get the light blue and then just dip it in the water. If I have to come check it over here, just make sure it's like a translucent light blue. And that way, when you're putting it on top up here, it will be more of a liquid blue. And that's how you can get it to transition without having so much of a green effect on top of it, okay? So I'm just gonna do that, put a few on top of this one, just so that way it kind of looks more transparent. Put some on these. And you're just gonna go back and forth with the color until you're happy with it. You see how it's more translucent, and that's how you can get those transitions. So that way it's not so just a dead straight line, and then, you know, it's not going to have those transitions and it's not going to look as good. So I'm going to make a little bit more of that light blue because this one kind of got a little too green on me. So I'm just going to put a little bit. And that's the good thing about acrylic is you can go back and forth on it. Areas that you're not too happy with, just go back with some more color of something else, of the color you're actually trying to attempt to get in those areas, okay? So at this point, I'm not concentrating on the silhouette just yet of the building that we're gonna be creating here from what we're going by as far as our reference. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna concentrate on the water. And I did tell you guys on the last practice that as you guys are doing the water versus something else, so in this case, it's the sky versus the water, we wanna get a different texture. So we don't want the same textures. That's the beauty of Impressionism, is a way to create the contrast is by changing the directions of your brush strokes. So this one was more of like an X pattern. The water we are going to this time around, not like the lily pads, because with the lily pads, we decided to do them, which is usually what most artists do. It's the popular way of doing the water more in a vertical direction. This is going to be actually horizontal. So we're going to actually do water of what we would think, you know, would be as far as the texture is going in a horizontal pattern. So at this point, because I have my colors here, if they were reflecting on the water, then they should go more or less in the same color. So like if I have red here, I should have more red here. If I have yellow here, I should have more yellow here. If I have light blue here, I should have more light blue here. However, we are going to create a little bit more of a definition and some areas in between by adding some colors that will kind of help guide the eye to the illusion of having that horizon line, okay? So I am gonna add a little bit of blue here. So I'm gonna take the blue that I have here first, just to kind of distinguish my line. Now I want it just a little bit above this. So this part down here on the bottom for me is going to get covered. If you're doing it exactly on yours, right on that area, that's fine. But I'm going to bring it up just because for me, that's too much of the white of the paper. And I just want to cover it at this time. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this direction. And I already noticed on mine, I need a little bit more water. So I'm going to put a little bit of water and I'm going to start going with a little bit of blue in this direction to kind of define that horizon line. I don't want it to be straight because it should be brush strokes. So I'm going to take it also this way. Even though technically I'm going to have my building and so forth that I'm going to be doing here, I'm just going to, you know, go ahead and start with those particular directions. All right. And so I want to kind of make it with the illusion because on my reference that I'm looking at, there is a hint of like a building that's kind of like, it's almost like if it were in some fog. And so I don't see the entire building 100%. I'm mixing a little bit of more light blue if you're trying to see what I'm doing over there. I'm just mixing more light blue, okay? So at this point, what I'm gonna end up doing is I wanna put a little bit of light blue for that little shadow effect, but I don't want it very strong. So I am going to dip my brush in the water just to make sure that it's more translucent. And then I'm just gonna put just a little tiny little bit of an effect over here. So it's like over here towards the back. So you see, it's just a hint of the color. It's not very strong. Same thing for right here. Maybe another little, it's like this building over here in the background. And then at that point, like if I want to go back and say, no, it's too strong, well then put some of the red. You can always put a little bit more of this so that way it kind of looks like more of a darker version of the color. You can kind of do that. And then, you know, if you don't want to do red, you can do orange as well. But we're just trying to make it almost disappear like if it's part of the background over here. Okay, so it's just kind of like a hint. You just see it slightly. So now that I have my line, now I'm going to start with the actual texture of the water. So I'm going to make my water just a little bit lighter than the actual sky. If you usually pay attention to reflections in water, they are a little bit distorted in color of what the original color is that's actually reflecting on it. So I want to give it some type of look. So I'm going to start off more with my orange. So I'm going to mix a little bit more orange here, make sure that it's a good color. So I'm going to start with the orange, not that I'm going to not put red. And honestly, the red that's already there should kind of poke through a little bit. So that's the good thing about this. I do need to mix some more, so I'm gonna mix some more orange on this side because I do need more of that color. So I might as well make it now. So remember, clean your brush off before you get the yellow, just so you don't dirty the yellow. We don't want to contaminate it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make some more orange. Remember to try to remove as much as possible off the brush. And so now that I have enough orange, I'm going to go ahead and just continue with my brush strokes. I'm keeping them to the side. I'm putting some brush strokes here. Even though you're like, well, I don't see too much of the brush stroke, eventually when we start adding some of the red and so forth, just stay in the same direction because it's a force of habit. If I start just kind of filling it in and trying to put in some other ones of the other colors, you're not going to get that brush stroke. So it's better just to stay with the same brush stroke, okay? And I'm just going to come over here. I'm just trying to remove whatever I have on my brush at this time, just to kind of, and just sticking in that same direction. So I'm just putting the orange where I'm going to want it, which should be all right here. And sometimes you guys might think that you don't see the brush strokes on mine, but if you were to see this in real life, I know it's kind of hard to see on camera. There are some, you can see almost like some thicker areas of paint. So I do see the texture live. You might not see it on camera, but it is there, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and put a little bit more orange. I'm just trying to remove whatever I have off my brush because I don't want to waste it before I start mixing into another color. So I'm just putting some orange this way because I know all this has to have orange. So if I'm just cleaning my brush technically, but still using it for the painting, okay? So now I'm gonna remove whatever else is left because I do wanna make sure that I also get some yellow in there. So I'm gonna start with the yellow here, but just same thing, just taking it to the side, trying to stick to the same. I don't wanna cover all of my orange. I just wanna make sure that I see the brush strokes. I see some yellow, I see some of the orange. And I want to try to make sure that I cover the white of the paper. So that's going to be where I add more of the yellow. And if yours looks a little different than mine, it's okay. It doesn't all have to look the same. And at this point, I'm just going to put my yellow because, again, I'm just trying to take off the stuff. And I know on the reference that I'm looking at, there's more yellow on this side. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just try to remove, but still sticking to the same direction. I'm still going side to side, okay? And then I know I'm gonna have to have a blue. So I'm gonna go ahead and get whatever, first clean my brush and get whatever light blue I still have over here. I'm probably gonna have to, I know I'm gonna have to mix more light blue, but you know, I'm gonna get a little bit of water first to try to get as much of the white blue that I already have over here that's with the light blue that's already mixed. So at this point now, I'm just going to start putting my brush strokes with the light blue in this direction. I know I'm going to have to mix more, so I'm going to go ahead and just make sure that I got enough of the dark blue. And I'm going to get another napkin so I can clean off whatever I already have here. Get a lot of my white because I know I have to mix some more of the light blue. And just make some more of that color. And I do want to have a little bit of light blue coming this way. Not as much, because if I'm comparing it to my reference picture, it has more on this side. So I'll just go back and add some more. Now that I have kind of like the colors where I want it, now I'm going to start with some of the detail work, okay? So at this point, even before, because the water's not finished yet, I do need to add some more. But even before I do that, I want to do the silhouette first so I know where that lies versus some of the details that I'm going to put in the water, okay, with the reflections. So at this time, I want to make sure that my brush is clean just because we're starting a new section. So I just want to make sure that I start off with a clean brush, okay? And I'm going to mix some colors because silhouettes are a lot darker. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to mix some purples. So I'm gonna get some of my blue. I'm gonna put it on this side because on my palette, this is where I have my dark colors over here with the purple. So I'm gonna put some blue here first. Try to remove it as much as you can from your brush, because if you're gonna clean your brush off, you don't wanna waste paint. So try to take off first as much as you can. Then I'm gonna get some of the red because blue and red will make purple. So I'm going to drop it off first because I will know I'm gonna need a little bit more. So just first remove it before you mix. Then once you kind of have a more or less of what you want from the blue and the red, start mixing it together to get your other tone. Now, if it looks too brown, it's probably because you have too much red in it. You probably need more blue. So add it slowly to it because you don't want to accidentally put too much and then you're going to need more red and you're just going to be going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I like this color. It looks almost like a maroon color. So I know I'm going to want to use some of this. So I don't want to cover all of it, but I do want some that looks a little bit more purple. So before I do that, I'm going to try to remove as much as possible from my brush just by putting it here off to the edge and removing it. Then I will clean my brush. Then I'm going to grab some more blue and I'm only going to mix it to this side. And I probably need a little bit more. So let me grab a little bit more before I even put it in here. I'm only going to mix it to this side of that maroon color just because I like that maroon color. I don't want to lose it. So I'm only going to mix that other purple over here off to the side. So it's almost like a half and half. I have half maroon and half of the darker purple. So now that I have that, I want to remove as much as possible. I still have some on my brush. So before I even wipe, I know I'm going to want some of this color. So I'm going to start concentrating on the edge over here. And I'm going to start kind of guiding of where that silhouette is going to be. So I'm going to just first place this color only. If I'm looking at my reference, because I have the reference in front of me, I'm putting it with the shape that I see. So it has like a little, almost like if it was like a chapel or something. And then here it comes with another little triangle shape. So I'm just concentrating on the outline, the silhouette. And then it's got this long tower that goes up. Now these brush strokes, if I'm paying attention to it, they are more vertical. So I'm gonna keep it very vertical. I'm just gonna go up and down as I'm applying some of the structure. You know, it goes like this, and then it has another kind of like little, looks like if it's like a separate building over here. Remember, up and down, trying to keep it more with a vertical shape. It does have like, if it has like a little thing that's up here on top of the structure, and then it kind of comes off to the side, but I still want to stay in vertical. So if you use this to go to the top, just put a few strokes this way and then go up and down with that. So that way we stick to the same. It comes down this direction. Actually, it goes straight and then it has a little drop like that. It's got a little tiny thing up here. Then it comes down this way. So try to pay attention to the sides, like the actual contour itself, the outline. And then it comes right here and it kind of dies off this way. Now there's some colors that we're going to put other than this color, but right now I'm just trying to get the shape of the image that I see here. So I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to try to keep it with the up and down direction, but I'm going to go about somewhere a little bit lower than the landscape itself, like the actual horizon line. So I'm going to come a little bit lower. It's okay if some of the background color shows through. If you guys get some of that red orange, leave some of it if you can. I covered most of it. There's only like little pops of color here or there, and that's fine. So I'm going to clean off the rest of that brush. I'm going to go back into my maroon color that I liked a lot, and I'm going to start adding some textures with my maroon color. So I'm just going to grab some more, and I'm just going to place other little colors in here. Just because I don't want to lose textures. I don't want to lose the actual movement of the brush, because that's what Impressionism is. It's more about the movement of your brushes as you're getting these images and so forth, and the impression of the image that you're trying to capture, okay? Now, if you want to go back and add maybe even some blues, like the dark blue, so maybe just right here on the corner, I can pick up a little bit of the dark blue. I can even add some hints of, as long as they're dark colors, you can add other colors. And the more color you put, the more texture you're going to see throughout. So that's only going to help, you know, the actual painting. So maybe like wherever the shadow work, where you would think that shadows would hit a little bit darker than others, because that will help the illusion of the light and so forth as it's hitting those buildings. You know, I am going to want to put a little bit shadow work here as it meets the water. So maybe I'll put some blues like right here. I'll put some blue right here down at the bottom, like right where it hits the water. I'm going to want to put some shadow work with a different color. Now, as a reflection in the water, when we did the original landscapes, guys, remember that, you know, so I'm going to get a little bit of, it's like a blue with the purple mix almost. I'm going to try to get a little bit in this direction, just because remember our water is going in a horizontal direction. Our building is going in a vertical direction. So if I get the same colors, and I can mix them a little bit, even if I wanted to kind of play with it with like a little bit of orange, so it's not the exact same color, you guys can place a couple of strokes right up against it, but in this direction. And just because you're putting it in this direction, it's going to look like some of the reflection from the building on the actual water itself. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to add a little bit, so that way it looks like the shadow effect of the building on the water. And this is the thing that about Impressionism that a lot of people don't understand. They think it's just a bunch of brush strokes, but this is what makes Impressionism, is the movement of your lines, the directions that you guys are placing them, you know, and not a lot of people will teach it like this. I just had good professors at the university that, you know, explain this to me. So, you know, like right here, how it comes out with reflection, then I'm going to go ahead and bring it out just a little bit like that. So wherever you see, I want to just make sure that I extend it just a little bit. Not, and it doesn't even have to be as big. It could be smaller. The building here is for sure going to extend further out. So I'm just going to go ahead and remember it's going to be manipulated and warped in the water. So it doesn't have to follow it exactly, as long as you see a hint of the colors going in this direction. So I'm going to put a little bit more, just with a little bit darker on some spots, just so it kind of looks like it. You know, I might like have a break of the color of the water because of the highlight. So I might not see the whole entire thing. I just need to make sure that I see, you know, that it's longer, and that'll give the illusion that it's, you know, more of like a water texture. And this one's going to come up a little bit because it goes a little bit higher on the building. It's kind of connected, so I shouldn't necessarily see too much here, but it should come out more or less about the same. Just kind of compare it. And then right here is going to have a little bit also. And then this one comes out a little bit more as well. And I mean, I'm already running out of paint on this, and that's okay, because that's how I get those illusions of the water breaking into it. So maybe this part just has a little bit darker. That's fine. Just do that on all of them like that. Now, going back and forth on it, like I'm not done yet, because I want the water to look like it has a little bit more of that illusion, that it's more of like water texture. So I am going to go with maybe just a little bit of the blues where the light blue are, and I can even put some of that purple. So I'm going to do the blue first. So I'm just going to put a few little strokes. I'm going to put some purple on that one, so that one will still get broken up. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit of texture of the dark blue here on the light. I'm going to extend it also this way. Put some on the yellow too, just to kind of give it some shadows. I'm going to put some water into it because I noticed that it's not really moving much. So if you notice that your paint's not moving like the way you want it to, like it's not flowing correctly, that just means you need to add water, okay? So like, I'll show you an example. So if I come over here and I start doing the strokes, now I'm getting a lot cleaner of a line, but it really depends on the texture that you guys are going for, because there's no right or wrong to this, you know, it's just how does it make you feel? Like, does it actually look like an impression of the image? And then also, like, remember I talked about Impressionism in the beginning, where I was talking about how when I just look at this, I'm really not supposed to know what it is. It's just an impression of the image. So if I do this, I might not know what it is. Maybe I can kind of tell it's a building, but when you put it with everything, you're like, okay, I can tell that, you know, it's a building, but they're doing it more in an impressionistic style, okay? I would still go back and forth. Like I would add a lot more. So I would probably come into my red a little bit. I would add more like some same brush strokes. I would just kind of add, just make sure that you stay in the same direction. Wherever direction that you were putting, go ahead and just stay in the same direction. So I put some red, I go back into the orange, and you're just playing around until you get the right amount of texture you want in each area. Maybe this one can have a little bit more yellow. Maybe I want some yellow over here in the blue just because I think it's too much blue. So go back and forth until you're happy with it. Like I said, when it's acrylic, you guys have the actual advantage that it's acrylic. So if you're not happy, no, this had too much red in it, let it dry and then go back on top of it with another color. And you can kind of go back and forth and get some of those textures. Like maybe this one, I had too much purple and I want to put some more of this other color in it. Then you have that option, okay? So you just go back and forth until you're happy with the whole entire thing. You know, once you guys are happy with it, because this is what we're practicing, it's still a practice, guys. So just take in mind that as you guys are practicing on these, you know, it's not your final yet. So this is you practicing to see what technique you like better. So when you do your final, and I will show you the final, like you're going to have options of what you want to select from as far as the style, and then you can kind of go on it your own. Then that's going to help you. This is going to help you decide which one you're going to want for that particular final. Okay. You know, maybe you might want to put a little bit of shadowing over here in these that were like over here in the background. So just kind of play with it until you're happy, guys. And then you're just going to take a photograph of it and upload it for me under your practices. But right now we're just concentrating on the silhouettes. Okay. Actually, let me go ahead and end the video there. So that way you guys feel comfortable in asking your questions if you have any. So I'm going to stop it at that time.